We've been working on some of these technologies for a very long time, and it's a pleasure to see that there's a point at which the aviation world, the ground world, the truck world, where we all merge together. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of the technologies right now. Historically, the aviation world has led. You've developed new technologies, power electronics, fly-by-wire, a lot of things like that that have then migrated to the auto industry. This is one case where we have an example of things going in the other direction. Now, the world, human history is measured in ages. I mean, you can look at what we do and what we use, and that's kind of how we defined who we are. The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. At some point we had the Age of Steam. And I think right now we're on the cusp of a new age. We're coming out of the age of oil, the petroleum age, and we're going into the age of the electron, or the age of the battery. You're seeing it, and you're seeing it in a lot of different places, whether it's your cell phones, whether it's power tools, appliances, and we're certainly seeing it in vehicles and mobility. And in all cases, what's happening is the battery is the enabler. The battery is leading the way into these new technologies. Now, cars are electrifying. They haven't all electrified right now, but we've gotten to the point where after several false starts, cars are widely being electrified. You see electric vehicles on the road, you don't even really think twice about it anymore. That's something that's routine. Buses are electrifying. In China, in India, they no longer are building majority diesel buses. They're building electric buses because it makes so much sense. And when you can understand where you're refueling, where you're recharging, it makes a lot of sense. Heavy-duty trucks have become electrified. This was almost a joke 5 years ago, but now we're seeing people building electric prototypes for heavy-duty trucks, and they're actually proposing making production within heavy-duty trucks. It's a long way to go, but it's something that we're seeing on the road right now. And as you see today, as you see above you and outside, aviation. Quads and fixed-wing electric aircraft are rapidly becoming not something that turns your head anymore. It's something you're used to seeing. And there's a discussion right now about long-haul aviation. Will long-haul commercial aviation go electric? I don't think so, but a lot of people think it will. And it's amazing that something that 3 years ago I thought was crazy is now something that's commonplace. So these technologies get adopted in a very set way. New technologies and innovations are adopted by an innovation curve. It's a standard thing. You could chart it. It's an S-curve. It happens very slowly at first, where very few people want to spend the massive amount of money required to do it. Then suddenly something happens and it goes mainstream, and everybody adopts it. Now you look at the curves that are on the chart behind me. Commercial aviation followed this curve. The telephone, the automobile. And in those cases, it was, in some cases, 25 or 30 years before that curve turned itself up and everybody adopted it. Right now, things are happening very, very quickly. So innovation adoption curves are in the terms of years or even months. And I could say cell phone or social media are examples of this. Now, electrification may be following this same curve, and we're looking at it very closely to understand, is that actually what's happening? Now, here are the latest numbers on the electric vehicle sales behind me. You can see that it could be turning up. We could be turning up into an age of disruption, an age of where everyone adopts it. It's hard to say right now, but certainly you see a linear and steady growth. And what that means is that resources and investment and money is going into providing the infrastructure and the materials necessary for electrification. And that's going to spill over into a lot of other areas. Now, we've been working on electrification for a long time. We were working on electric vehicles before they were cool, before electric aircraft was cool. We're going to continue to work on them into the future. So the batteries and the battery chemistries that you're talking about right now very likely either flowed through one of the national labs, or it flowed through one of the American universities. And this is something that's really one of the big secrets as well, is that the Americans have been developing and inventing the battery chemistries that the whole world uses right now. Now, granted, those are generally commercialized or made someplace else, but they have their roots here. Now, this has been really over a 50-year program where the U.S. government, through the Department of Energy, has been investing in developing these battery chemistries. It took a lot of foresight. It took a lot of bipartisan support. It took a lot of brain power, but they've been working on it steadily for a long time. So 50 years ago, they were looking at nickel metal hydride batteries and lithium polymer batteries. In the 1990s, Department of Energy put money into lithium ion, the chemistries we have right now. And now some of the chemistries that have been clicking along steadily have come out of these investments, long-term investments, and they've really had a lot of success. Now, most of you are technical enough to have heard of Moore's Law. Have you heard of Moore's Law? Very good. It's the observation that the number of transistors on a dense integrated circuit doubles every 2 years. We've followed that, and it's computer storage. It's basically how we understand how it's going to advance with respect to how computers are going to improve. But there's a Moore's law for batteries as well. And it's not quite as geometric, but it's been consistent. Moore's law for batteries says that 5% improvement per year is what you're going to see as we do battery development. It's what we've seen if you look at this chart, which Pat showed a little bit earlier. I gave it to him, by the way, a little bit earlier. The red bar is a linear growth at 5% per year. Now, when you have that kind of investment in growth, you could really count on some things happening. We've seen it happening since 1990, and as a researcher who works in this field, as far as we can see into the future, we expect we're going to continue to see this advancement. 5% per year, compounded interest, which means you can make some real plans. If you look at this blue line, the curve that dives down, those are the costs of batteries as well. So we've also seen a steady drop in cost to the point where it curves down to where we're getting to material costs right now. One of the big open questions is, how far down is the cost going to go? We talk about something that we call the solar effect. What the solar effect is, photovoltaics were invented, they were commercialized, and they got to a certain set price, the point at which the cost levels out. What we didn't expect was certain parts of the world decided they wanted to own the solar world, so they invested massive amounts of money into solar cells. They were willing to lose a lot of money to undercut the solar industry and to get the costs to come down. Now, I'm not going to talk about the morality of that, but I will talk about the result, and that is the cost of solar cells plummeted so that pretty much anyone can afford a solar cell right now. Will the same thing happen to batteries? Some people bet that's going to be the case. Let's look at the materials roadmap. If we look right now on the far left side of what you see, lithium-ion today, these are theoretical efficiencies. We look at a maximum theoretical efficiency of about 365 watt-hours per kilogram. That's about what we can get to. But when you look at chemistries we're going to develop, you see we have the potential for far more growth. Zinc-air batteries can go to 1,000. Lithium sulfur to 2,600. Lithium air batteries theoretically can go to a 5,000 kilowatt hour per kilogram efficiency. Now, all we need for aviation, we think, is around 1,000 kilowatt hours per kilogram. Or watt hours per kilogram, I'm sorry. So we know we can get there. When we look at the theoretical efficiency, there are a lot of spaces that we can go to into the future. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip through this, but there are a range of different chemistries that we're very interested in. Magnesium, calcium, zinc. We could even look at sodium batteries as one of the endpoints. Well, one of the big advantages to sodium is that sodium, while it has lower energy density, is extremely inexpensive. So we know we can drive the cost down even further. This is a spider chart. These are the charts that we use to actually do the development for the batteries we see. The chart behind me is a battery chart that was put together, a spider chart that was put together 20 years ago. And my groups have been focused on meeting these objectives for the last 20 years. When it started out, it was a little red dot in the center of that chart. And as we've done our development, we've slowly grown out in the different areas of what we need to advance. Specific energy, power density, cycle life, calendar life. Those are all different objectives that we're working toward. But the thing I want to get across to you as you look at this chart is that this chart is for a car. We've never built a chart like this for an airplane. And we've never really put a research program together to try to deliver the battery that aviation needs. So somebody asked a question about cycle life. That's right, 700 cycles. That's because that's what a car needs. Now, aviation batteries will want something else. And when we do research in those areas, we will target chemistries that have better cycle lives, in addition to the fact that there are many other ways to handle it. The holy grail of it all, of course, is solid state. We want to get to a point where we have solid state chemistries, where we can use solid polymers, solid materials, ceramics, no movable parts, no flames, no thermal events, simply solid things that will take electrons in and spit electrons back out again. I want to talk about a study that we did at Argonne. One of the big issues we're dealing with is the fact that batteries don't have the energy density we need. When we look at the 5% per year compounded annual growth, and we compare that to the annual growth of, say, engines at the same time, we can chart those off into the future, and we can spot where it is we're going to hit a point where battery energy density as a system equals that of a current fuel system. We've done that. It looks like about 2045 on current growth curves is when we're going to have a crossover. I know, that's almost 30 years away. But you guys are aviation people. These airplanes you're dealing with have 50-year lives. They have 20-year development cycles. So if you're really talking about the plane of the future, you have to consider right now that in 2045 you're going to have a crossover. And I'm going to bet we're going to discover something before that that's going to bring that closer and going to happen a whole lot more quickly. I'll finish with some headwinds. So we have issues that we have to deal with. Uber talked about wanting to, I think they showed a very nice chart on some of the cycles that you're dealing with. So how do you solve some of those issues? Well, one of them is fast charging. Charging times have to drop, and we have to look at chemistries that will bring those charging times down. Right now, we're working with chargers that are 500 kilowatt chargers. That's a phenomenal amount of power that has to flow. A 1-inch diameter cable with liquid nitrogen cooling to move that many electrons. At the same time, a gas pump is a 10 megawatt charger. When you put it in, 10 megawatts of power goes into a gas tank. We have to figure out how to solve that. We need careful management of the grid to figure out how to get power to these different corners. We need to look at chemistries for fast charge. And one of our big evil things we fight against is low fuel prices. As fuel goes down, people stop investing in these technologies and progress slows down. And then, of course, autonomous technologies may work against us as well. The bottom line is we're going to deliver the battery that the aviation people need. The question is, what will you do with it? Thank you.